guys, Josh from SoccerReviewsForYou.com, bringing you an unboxing plus on-feet video of the Made in Japan Mizuno Morelia 2. Now inside the box they do include a boot bag with the shoes. The bag, as you can see, is white. It's made from like a nylon material. You got your black Mizuno branding in the middle, and it's not a backpack style string bag. It just has this little string at the top so you can pull the bag shut once the shoes are inside. But other than that, all you're going to find inside the box are the shoes themselves, as you guys can see. So I'll pull these out of the box really quickly and take a closer look at the Made in Japan version of the Mizuno Morelia. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Mizuno as a brand, it's a Japanese-based company that really does make some fantastic products right now, especially footwear. They're extremely underrated as far as brands that are in North America are concerned. If you're not familiar with Mizuno, I strongly recommend checking out my channel and just doing a general search for Mizuno products. I have several playtests, reviews, comparisons. They really make some great stuff right now. And like I said, they really are one of the most overlooked brands that makes really, really phenomenal products. Now, the Mizuno Morelia, for those that don't know, is essentially Mizuno's ultra classic model. So it's a very simple design, black and white as you guys can see, and of course it's an all-over kangaroo leather upper. It's their Copa Mundial, if you will. Now what I'm going to be talking about in today's video and what this shoe is, because it is actually special, this is the Made in Japan version of the Mizuno Morelia. So essentially what they consider to be their ultra premium version of the regular Mizuno Morelia, which I have right here. Now, for those that don't know, Mizuno makes two alternate high-end models, a regular version, which is generally made in Indonesia, and an ultra premium version, generally made in Japan. Now, the difference is supposed to be build quality. Sometimes the actual shoe is physically different. Basically, the made in Japan ones are almost guaranteed to be handmade. The craftsmanship is supposed to be better, and the quality overall is better because of that handmade craftsmanship. But of course, there's a difference in price, and you definitely pay a very, very large premium for the Made in Japan version. The Indonesian-made Mizuno Morelia, which is really good in terms of quality, by the way, is going to run you about $150 US, sometimes even a little bit less than that, whereas the Made in Japan version of the shoe is going to run you anywhere between $280 and $250 US. So it's almost double the price of an Indonesian-made Mizuno Morelia, which is still kangaroo leather, by the way. So in today's video, we're going to be doing a side-by-side comparison between both of these two shoes and essentially come to the conclusion and determine whether or not the Made in Japan version really is that much better for essentially double the price. So if that's something that you're interested in, stick around, and with that being said, let's get right into the video. To start things off, let's very quickly just go over the colorway here on this Made in Japan Mizuno Morelia. Now, as you can see, it features an all-black kangaroo leather upper. You're going to find your white detailing in the form of the Mizuno branding on both the lateral and medial side, which I think looks really good on this more traditionally styled shoe. You have your red accents here at the rear portion and the very back of the heel on the shoe. Your Morelia branding right there in gold, as you guys can see. Your big traditional flap tongue in white. You can see it says Mizuno Professional Model, and it actually does say Made in Japan on the tongue. On the underside, it's black with the little Velcro fastener there. Black laces, as you can see. Black heel lining, black insole, nothing too fancy there. And then the outsole does look a little bit more complex in comparison to something like the Copa, but nothing that is unusual for the Mizuno Morelia, even in comparison to the Indonesian-made version. So it's a black base to the sole plate. All of the studs are white in color, and then you have this little red accent right there in the middle of the forefoot. So as far as colorway and the overall styling of the shoe is concerned, it's a traditionally styled shoe with a very traditional look. So if that's something that you are interested in, if that's something that you like the look of, I personally do a lot. I really like wearing shoes that have that old school vibe about them. Then you're probably going to love the look of the Mizuno Morelia, either the regular version or the Made in Japan model. As far as tech specs are concerned, this is where I have been very curious regarding the Made in Japan version of the Mizuno Morelia, because I know how good the Indonesian-made version is. It really does compare quite nicely to something like the Copa Mundial with less of a high volume bulky fit. It fits more like a modern shoe, which is why a lot of people prefer the Morelia over something like the Copa. And I expect something very, very similar from the Made in Japan version. What confused me, and especially considering that these things cost so much more money, is how much better can the quality actually be? And that's what we're going to take a look at right now. Now, keep in mind that both of these shoes are made from high quality kangaroo leather. We'll just take a quick glance at the Indonesian made version, and you can see the quality of the leather is very, very nice. Just as good as what you're going to find on a Copa Mundial, which to me is kind of the benchmark for any kangaroo leather soccer shoe. Now, in comparison to the Made in Japan version, I will say that this leather does seem to be a little bit softer. It's the same stitching pattern pretty much all the way around, as you guys can see. They really didn't change too much as far as the pattern is concerned or the visuals of the shoe. You can see there's a slight variation right there, but that has absolutely nothing to do with performance. And even here on the medial side, all of the stitching, all the materials are about the same on both of these two shoes. The major difference that I noticed is that yes, the leather does seem to be a little bit softer on this Made in Japan version, and it also seems to be a little bit thinner. And that's not so much the leather. You guys can see the side profile right there. But if you look at the side profile on the Indonesian made one, it just seems to have a slightly chunkier lining material. So for that reason, I would expect these to feel a little bit less bulky on feet and a little bit softer because there is actually less material between your foot and the very soft kangaroo leather upper. But other than that, both uppers appear to be and feel very, very similar to each other. They both have a central lacing system, as you guys can see, with not a straight lining, straight lacing system. It kind of zigzags a little bit, which really does create a nice lockdown feel. And again, you get that on both of the shoes. What I like about the Mizuno Morelia line in comparison to something like the Copa is it does have that big flap tongue, but it's actually pre-flapped. So you can see you have a little bit of nylon material that's very, very flexible at the top of the tongue that attaches this flap part. So it's actually going to stay down for you pretty much right out of the box. You don't have to break it in like you would a pair of Copas. Now you can see both of these shoes do feature the flap tongue, but they aren't identical. This one is a little bit shorter and a little bit wider, whereas this one's a little bit more narrow and a little bit lower, as you guys can see. They're both secured by Velcro, and actually the Indonesian made one feels more like leather than the Japanese made one, which feels more like a synthetic material, but they are a very similar thickness, as you guys can see. So as far as the upper is concerned, I would say this one feels a little bit softer and a little bit thinner, but again, not dramatically different from the Indonesian made version of the Mizuno Morelia. Moving on to the heel liner, on the Indonesian made one, you get a smooth synthetic leather material with actually a pretty significant amount of padding. It's really, really comfortable shoe, pretty much from right out of the box, especially once you break it in. And again, comfort was not an issue here at all. In comparison, the Made in Japan version features more of a slick synthetic leather material. It's a lot smoother than what you find on this Indonesian made one. And there actually seems to be a lot less padding in here as well, which I'm honestly not too worried about. The fit of the shoe speaks for itself. It's very, very comfortable, and I'm not concerned about blister or anything like that. But it definitely does seem to be a little bit thinner as far as padding is concerned in the heel area of the shoe on the Made in Japan version. The insoles on both of these shoes are of course fully removable. The Indonesian made one, or the white one that I have right here, this is the insole, mesh lining on top, your Morelia branding, and just a very thin layer of this pink foam material. Nothing special, but it does get the job done. It does have a slight texturing to the mesh as well in order to grip your sock a little bit better, whereas the Made in Japan version definitely does have a nicer insole. I will give it that. It features a mesh liner on top, but that really rough mesh, almost like a reverse side of Velcro, similar to what you find on the Mizuno Morelia Neo lineup. You can see it says Morelia Anatomical Fit. And again, I'm not going to talk too much about the fit of the shoe right now. We're going to save that for later in the video, and I will actually have one shoe on one foot and the other on the other, so we can see exactly if there is any difference in fit or the overall shape of the shoe. But I really like this liner. It grips your sock nicely and keeps your foot from sliding around on the inside of the boot, and it's made from a significantly higher quality and thicker, more dense foam material. So step-in comfort is definitely a little bit better on the Japanese made version, but again, this insole is certainly not going to justify spending an extra $100 to $150 on the Made in Japan version versus the Indonesian made version. Now moving on to the sole plate and stud pattern, on the regular Mizuno Morelia, it's made from a standard piece of plastic. You have a very traditional layout here with 4 conical studs in the heel, 8 conical studs in the forefoot, and 1 conical support stud right there in the middle. You have the 3 rivets at the tip of the toe and your 3 rivets at the base. So it's a very, very secure as far as durability is concerned. You're not going to run into issues at all here. And again, it's just a nice base if you're looking for something that's going to offer a more traditional feel. It certainly has more of a modern look than what you're going to get from a pair of Copa Mundials. On the Made in Japan version, it's pretty much the same from what I can tell. The plastic appears to be a similar thickness, although it does seem to be a little bit more flexible from right out of the box. You have rivets pretty much all in the same place. It's not identical, as you guys can see. There are some very minor differences as far as how all the overlays of plastics are kind of positioned on the actual sole plate itself. But again, 3 rivets at the toe, 3 rivets at the heel, so everything's secured in place really nicely. And the stud pattern is exactly the same. Length of the studs are exactly the same. You just have a slightly different pattern with the actual plastic overlays on that main black plastic sole plate. So again, I don't expect to feel too big of a difference here as far as the sole plate and the traction is concerned, considering that they are so similar to each other. And again, as far as what the major differences are, the one thing that jumps out at me that I would notice as a difference between these two shoes is the insoles, as well as this shoe just feeling a little bit thinner and ever so slightly softer versus the Indonesian-made Mizuno Morelia. But other than that, as far as tech specs are concerned, on paper, these are two very, very similar shoes, despite them costing significantly more with the made in Japan version versus the Indonesian-made version of the Morelia. One thing that I immediately noticed when holding the regular Mizuno Morelia and the Made in Japan Morelia in my hands is that the Made in Japan version does come across as being a little bit lighter. So I thought it'd be cool to compare both of these two shoes for you today in real time to see what the actual weight difference is, if there's any weight difference at all. So keep in mind that these are both in brand new condition and both in the same size 9 US. We'll start off with the regular Indonesian made Morelia, throw it on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 9.8 ounces, which certainly isn't light, but it's not heavy either. It's what you would expect for a shoe that has a very traditional look and a very traditional style about it. So we'll take that off the scale and we'll throw on the Made in Japan version of the Morelia, and you can see that they weigh in at ever so slightly lighter, 9.3 ounces. So they're about half an ounce lighter than the standard Indonesian-made Mizuno Morelia, which is nothing significant. It's noticeable in your hand, not so noticeable on feet. But again, they are made better. It does feature slightly thinner, what seems to be softer materials as well. So because of that, they did manage to shave half an ounce of weight on this shoe. And if you are looking for something that is going to be very traditionally styled with that all-over kangaroo leather upper, but also at the same time isn't going to weigh you down, then the Made in Japan Morelia is probably going to be the lightest shoe in this particular category currently out there on the market. All right, so here's a look at the regular Morelias and the Made in Japan Morelias on feet. And if you've made it to this point in the video, you're probably telling yourself, why would I pay the extra money for the Made in Japan version versus the standard pair if there's very little difference, or what seems to be very little difference between the two? And up until this point as well, prior to trying the shoes on, I would agree with you. But after putting them on my feet, I would describe the regular Morelia in terms of how it fits and feels as great, and I would describe the Made in Japan version as absolutely fantastic. It really is awesome in terms of how it feels, and you definitely can tell a difference between these two shoes. Yes, they're similar. I don't want to make it seem like the Made in Japan version is a night and day difference versus what you get from the regular Indonesian-made Morelia, because like I said, the difference is not that significant, but you definitely can tell that the Made in Japan version fits nicer, the leather is softer, it's thinner, it fits your foot a little bit nicer, and again, it's just a better quality shoe overall. You can feel the quality on your feet, and that's really what I was looking for from this Made in Japan version. Is that going to be worth the extra $100 to $150 for everybody? Probably not, but if you're really looking for the best offering, the best form of the Mizuno Morelia from the brand, then the Made in Japan version is definitely the better of the two variations. Now, as far as fit is concerned, in comparison to something like a Copa, which I would describe as being a very wide, high volume type of shoe, the Morelia is a much tighter fit, especially the Made in Japan version. It's a lower volume, and it feels more along the lines of a modern pair of soccer cleats, which I personally prefer over a pair of Copa Mundials. I would prefer the Copas over the standard Indonesian-made Mizuno Morelia, but this Made in Japan version, I can't wait to try them out because I really, really like how they feel. As far as width is concerned, it's a little bit tighter out of the box in comparison to a pair of Copas, especially in the forefoot and toe box area, but because the leather is so soft and so thin, I definitely see that it will stretch a lot after a couple hours of wear time. So again, if they feel a little bit snug from right out of the box, don't worry, that's kind of how you want them to fit, because once they break in, you're going to have a nice, comfortable kind of one-to-one mold of your foot once that leather has had some time to stretch. As far as sizing is concerned, unlike the Copa, these things run true to size. I'm wearing my usual size 9 US in both of these Mizunos, Made in Japan or the Indonesian made, it really doesn't matter, and the fit and the length is absolutely perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair of Mizuno Morelias, I would strongly recommend going true to size for the best possible fit. Alright guys, that's it for my unboxing of the Made in Japan Mizuno Morelia. I really can say that I am truly impressed with the craftsmanship and quality of this shoe. They're some of the nicest shoes that I've ever held in my hands and wore on my feet, and it definitely does come through in terms of how these things fit and feel. With that being said, I do think that they are a little bit expensive, and because of that, they aren't going to appeal to everybody. Copas are significantly cheaper, the regular Mizuno Morelia is significantly cheaper, and those two shoes honestly are not far off in terms of quality when compared to the Made in Japan Mizuno Morelia. So again, if you're looking for the best of the best as far as what Mizuno has to offer with their traditional Morelia model, then the Made in Japan model is worth every penny. The quality and, like I said, the craftsmanship is definitely there. If you're really not into paying that much money for a pair of shoes, or that having the best of the best is not necessarily the most important thing to you, or if you're just having a pair of affordable shoes that perform extremely well and are made really well, then the regular Morelia or just a regular pair of Copa Mundials is definitely going to get the job done. But again, if you're looking for the best of the best, this really is the best of the best when it comes to traditionally styled modern day soccer shoes. So really like these, really excited to wear them. If you're interested in a pair of these for yourself, check out the review page on my website. There'll be a link to that down below in the description. I'll be working on the full written review over the next couple of weeks or so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, you can check out the high quality images of this shoe that'll give you a better idea as to how they actually do look in person. And of course, those buy it now links with the best prices online, along with exclusive SR4U coupon codes where you can pick these up below their retail price, will also be on that review page, linked down below in the description. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave a comment down below and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you enjoyed today's video, found it helpful and informative, be sure to support it with a like. That would be greatly appreciated as well. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. All my social media information can also be found down below in the description. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.